The golden box sits in darkness, hidden away in some warehouse or lost to the sands of time. For 3,000 years, the most sacred object in human history has vanished without a trace. The Ark of the Covenant, described in biblical texts as the dwelling place of God himself, disappeared from Solomon's temple around 586 BCE and has never been found. We've been told it was a simple wooden chest overlaid with gold, containing stone tablets and serving as a throne for the divine. But what if everything we've been taught about the Ark is wrong? What if this wasn't a religious artifact at all, but something far more extraordinary? A piece of technology so advanced it seemed like magic to ancient minds. A machine whose true purpose has been buried beneath centuries of religious interpretation and scholarly assumption. Welcome to a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about one of history's most enigmatic objects. I'm about to reveal evidence that suggests the Ark of the Covenant wasn't just a box, but a sophisticated device whose capabilities would astound even modern engineers. We're going to examine the biblical descriptions with fresh eyes, decode the technical specifications hidden in plain sight, and explore the terrifying power that made even priests afraid to approach it without following exact protocols. Because when you strip away the religious language and look at what the ancient texts actually describe, a shocking picture emerges of technology that seems to belong in a science fiction novel, not in the pages of scripture. But before we dive into this mystery, let me tell you why this matters more than you might think. The implications of what we're about to uncover don't just rewrite religious history. They force us to question our understanding of ancient civilizations, the nature of divine encounters, and whether humanity has been in contact with advanced technology far longer than we've ever imagined. This isn't just about solving an archaeological puzzle. It's about discovering a truth that could fundamentally change how we see our past and our place in the universe. Over the next several parts of this investigation, we're going to systematically dismantle the traditional narrative and rebuild it from the ground up using evidence that's been hiding in plain sight for millennia. We'll examine the precise construction details that sound more like engineering specifications than religious instructions. We'll explore the deadly phenomena reported around the Ark that match perfectly with known effects of high-voltage electrical systems. We'll investigate the materials used in its construction and discover why those specific combinations would be chosen by someone designing an advanced technological device. And we'll trace the Ark's mysterious disappearance to uncover clues about who might have wanted this technology hidden from the world. But here's what makes this investigation truly explosive. Every piece of evidence we're about to examine comes directly from the most studied religious texts in history. These aren't fringe theories based on questionable sources. These are careful analyses of biblical descriptions that scholars have been reading for centuries without recognizing their true significance. The technical details have been there all along, waiting for someone to approach them not as a theologian, but as an engineer. The story begins in the wilderness of Sinai, where Moses receives incredibly detailed instructions for constructing what appears to be a simple wooden box. But when you read these instructions with a technical mindset, they describe something entirely different. The specifications are so precise, so specific about materials and dimensions, that they read like a blueprint for a complex electrical device. We're told exactly what metals to use, how to arrange them, where to place conducting elements, and how to create an insulating barrier between the device and anyone who might touch it. These aren't the vague descriptions you'd expect from ancient religious texts. They're engineering drawings translated into the only language available to Bronze Age scribes. Consider the materials alone. The Ark's core was made of acacia wood, one of the most resistant insulators available in the ancient world. This wooden frame was then completely covered in pure gold, creating a perfect conducting shell around an insulating core. On top of this golden box sat two cherubim, also made of solid gold, with their wings stretched toward each other but not quite touching. Between these wings, in the space above what was called the mercy seat, was where the presence of God was said to dwell. But what if this wasn't a metaphysical presence at all? What if the gap between those golden wings was designed to create an electrical arc, a visible manifestation of power that would convince anyone who saw it that they were witnessing something divine? The more you examine these details, the more they point toward a device designed to generate, store, and discharge electrical energy. The gold-covered wooden box would function as a massive capacitor, storing electrical charge until it reached dangerous levels. The cherubim would serve as electrodes, creating a controlled gap for electrical discharge. The mercy seat would act as both an insulating barrier and a viewing platform for observing the electrical phenomena occurring above it. Every single element described in the biblical construction manual serves a specific purpose in creating what amounts to an ancient electrical generator. But the construction details are just the beginning. It's what happened around the ark that truly reveals its technological nature. The biblical accounts are filled with incidents that make perfect sense if you're dealing with a high-voltage electrical device, but which have puzzled theologians for centuries. People who touched the ark without proper precautions were instantly killed. Individuals approaching it incorrectly were struck down by what appears to be electrical discharge. Even the priests who were authorized to handle it had to follow elaborate safety protocols that sound exactly like the procedures you'd use when working with dangerous electrical equipment. Take the story of Uzzah, who reached out to steady the ark when it seemed about to fall from a cart. The moment his hand made contact with the golden surface, he was dead. Traditional interpretation calls this divine judgment for irreverence. But if the ark was a charged electrical device, Uzzah's death makes perfect scientific sense. He became a conductor between the charged surface and the ground, and the electrical discharge killed him instantly. The biblical account even mentions that David was afraid to move the ark after this incident, which is exactly how you'd expect someone to react after witnessing a fatal electrical accident. The safety protocols prescribed for handling the ark read like a modern electrical safety manual. Only specific individuals were allowed to approach it, and only after following elaborate purification rituals that may have actually been grounding procedures. The ark had to be carried using wooden poles that were never removed from their rings, ensuring that the carriers never came into direct contact with the conducting surface. When the ark was moved, it was covered with multiple layers of fabric, possibly to prevent accidental contact and to contain any electrical discharge. These weren't religious requirements. They were safety measures designed to prevent electrocution. Even more telling are the phenomena reported around the ark during times of crisis or important events. Witnesses described seeing fire, hearing thunder, and observing what they called the glory of the Lord appearing above the mercy seat. Strip away the religious language, and these accounts describe exactly what you'd expect to see around a powerful electrical device. Electrical arcs produce light that ancient observers would interpret as divine fire. High-voltage discharges create sounds that would seem like thunder to Bronze Age ears. The visible electrical phenomena dancing between the cherubim's wings would certainly appear to be a supernatural manifestation to people who had no understanding of electricity. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from examining what the ark actually did beyond serving as a religious symbol. According to biblical accounts, the ark had practical applications that make no sense if it was just a decorative box, but which are perfectly logical if it was a functioning machine. It was used in military operations, apparently providing some kind of tactical advantage. It was employed in communication, with Moses receiving messages while positioned near it. It served a role in what we're told was divine judgment, somehow determining guilt or innocence in legal proceedings. These diverse functions suggest a device with multiple operational modes, not a passive religious artifact. The military applications are particularly intriguing. The ark preceded the Israelite army into battle on several occasions, and its presence was apparently crucial to their victory. At Jericho, the ark was carried around the city walls for 7 days before the walls collapsed. Traditional interpretation attributes this to divine intervention, but acoustic engineers have suggested that the ark might have been capable of generating powerful sound waves or vibrations that could destabilize ancient construction. If the device could produce focused acoustic energy, it would explain both the collapse of Jericho's walls and the military advantage it provided to its operators. The communication function is equally fascinating. Moses is described as receiving direct messages from God while positioned between the cherubim, in the exact location where electrical phenomena would be most visible. If the ark was capable of generating controlled electrical discharges, it's possible that these discharges were being modulated to convey information. Ancient observers would interpret any pattern in the electrical activity as divine communication, but it might actually have been a sophisticated form of data transmission using electrical signals. The judicial applications suggest the ark could somehow determine truth from falsehood, guilt from innocence. While this sounds supernatural, it might actually describe a primitive form of lie detection. Electrical fields can affect human physiology in measurable ways, potentially causing involuntary responses that would reveal deception. If the ark generated strong electrical fields, it could have influenced the nervous systems of individuals brought before it, causing truthful people to react differently than those who were lying. To ancient observers, this would seem like divine judgment, but it might have been an early application of bioelectrical monitoring. What makes all of this even more extraordinary is that these weren't isolated incidents. The electrical phenomena around the ark were consistent and predictable enough that elaborate protocols developed around them. The priest knew exactly how to approach the device safely, when to expect electrical activity, and how to interpret the various forms of discharge they observed. This suggests they were dealing with a technology that, while beyond their understanding, operated according to consistent physical principles that could be learned and managed. The question that haunts this entire investigation is obvious. If the ark was indeed an advanced technological device, where did it come from? The biblical account attributes its design to divine instruction, with God providing Moses with exact specifications for its construction. But what if those specifications actually came from a source that understood electrical engineering principles that wouldn't be rediscovered by human science for thousands of years? What if the ark was either built by or designed by someone with technological knowledge far beyond what should have existed in the ancient world? This brings us to one of the most troubling aspects of the ark's story. Despite being the most sacred object in ancient Israel, despite being housed in the most important temple ever built, despite being guarded by the most powerful kingdom in the region, the ark simply vanished. There's no record of it being destroyed, no account of it being captured by enemies, no mention of it being moved for safekeeping. One day, it was in Solomon's temple, and then it was gone, leaving behind only questions and centuries of speculation about its fate. The disappearance becomes even more mysterious when you consider the timing. The ark vanished just before the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem, almost as if someone knew what was coming and removed it before the city fell. But who would have had both the authority to take the most sacred object in Israel and the foresight to act before the crisis hit? And perhaps more importantly, who would have understood the true nature of what they were protecting? The implications of this planned removal become even more disturbing when you examine the historical record. The last definitive mention of the ark in biblical texts occurs during the reign of King Josiah, roughly 20 years before Jerusalem's destruction. Josiah was conducting massive religious reforms, centralizing worship and purging foreign influences from the temple. It's during this period of upheaval that the ark quietly disappears from the historical narrative, never to be mentioned again in contemporary accounts. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Josiah wasn't just any king. He was deeply connected to a secretive priestly class that had maintained the ark for centuries. These weren't ordinary religious officials, they were the inheritors of ancient knowledge, the keepers of technical protocols that had been passed down since Moses. They understood the ark's true nature in ways that ordinary people never could. And as the Babylonian threat grew stronger, they faced an impossible choice: allow this incredible technology to fall into enemy hands, or hide it so well that even their own people would forget it ever existed. The evidence suggests they chose the latter, but the question that should terrify anyone investigating this mystery is simple. If the ark was hidden rather than destroyed, where is it now? And more importantly, who has been guarding its secrets for the past 26 centuries? Archaeological expeditions have searched for the ark in locations ranging from Ethiopia to Ireland, from hidden chambers beneath Jerusalem to remote caves in the Judean desert. Every search has failed, not because the searchers weren't skilled or dedicated, but because they were looking for a religious artifact. They expected to find a golden box surrounded by ceremonial objects, preserved in some holy shrine, awaiting rediscovery. But what if they should have been looking for something else entirely? What if the ark wasn't hidden as a religious relic, but secured as dangerous technology? Consider the possibility that those ancient priests understood exactly what they were dealing with. They had maintained operational protocols for a device that could kill with a touch, generate visible electrical phenomena, and produce effects that seemed supernatural to anyone who didn't understand its true nature. They had witnessed its power firsthand, seen it level city walls and strike down anyone who approached it incorrectly. They knew this wasn't just a symbol of divine presence. It was a weapon of incredible destructive potential, and it was about to fall into the hands of the most powerful empire in the ancient world. The Babylonians weren't just conquerors. They were sophisticated engineers and astronomers who might have been capable of reverse engineering the ark's technology. If they had captured the device and understood its principles, they could have mass-produced similar weapons, fundamentally altering the balance of power in the ancient world. The priests who hid the ark weren't just protecting a religious symbol, they were preventing a technological catastrophe that could have changed the course of human history. This perspective transforms our understanding of the ark's disappearance from a religious mystery into a technological cover-up of staggering proportions. The device wasn't lost, it was deliberately hidden by people who understood its true nature and recognized the danger of allowing it to be discovered by the wrong hands. They created false trails, planted misleading stories, and allowed the device's religious significance to overshadow its technological reality. They turned the most advanced piece of ancient technology into a myth, ensuring that future generations would search for a golden box instead of an electrical weapon. But the cover-up goes deeper than simply hiding the device. The very language used to describe the ark in later religious texts seems designed to obscure its technological nature. Terms like glory of the Lord and divine presence replaced more specific descriptions of electrical phenomena. Safety protocols became religious rituals. Engineering specifications were transformed into sacred measurements whose true purpose was forgotten. Over centuries, the technical manual became a religious text, and the machine became a mystery. The sophistication of this misdirection suggests it wasn't accidental. Someone with deep understanding of both the technology and human psychology deliberately crafted a narrative that would hide the truth in plain sight. They knew that future generations would read these accounts as religious literature, focusing on the spiritual significance while ignoring the technical details. They created the perfect camouflage, a story so wrapped in religious language that scientists wouldn't take it seriously, and so filled with technical details that theologians wouldn't understand their significance. This brings us to perhaps the most unsettling question in this entire investigation. If the ark was successfully hidden by ancient conspirators who understood its true nature, what happened to that knowledge? Did it simply die with the last generation of initiated priests, or was it passed down through secret channels, preserved by hidden societies that have guarded this incredible secret for millennia? The historical record offers tantalizing hints that the knowledge didn't simply vanish. Throughout history, certain groups have claimed special understanding of Solomon's temple and its sacred objects. The Knights Templar, who excavated beneath the Temple Mount for nearly a century, allegedly discovered something so significant that it transformed them from a small monastic order into the most powerful organization in medieval Europe. They developed advanced engineering techniques, accumulated vast wealth through mysterious means, and maintained strict secrecy about their discoveries. When they were finally suppressed by the French king, they had ample warning to hide their most important treasures, and those treasures have never been found. The Templars weren't the only group to claim special knowledge of temple secrets. Masonic traditions speak of hidden wisdom preserved from Solomon's time, including technical knowledge that was supposedly lost when the temple was destroyed. These aren't vague spiritual concepts. Masonic symbolism is filled with engineering tools, architectural principles, and geometric relationships that suggest familiarity with advanced construction techniques. Their initiation rituals include detailed descriptions of temple architecture and references to secrets that were preserved by master craftsmen who escaped Jerusalem's destruction. Even more intriguing are the persistent legends about the Ark's current location. Ethiopian Orthodox Christians claim their church in Aksum houses the original Ark, guarded by a single priest who is never allowed to leave the compound. They describe an object so dangerous that only one person at a time can approach it, and that person must follow elaborate safety protocols that sound remarkably similar to the ancient biblical instructions. While most scholars dismiss these claims, the consistency of the safety procedures suggests that someone in Aksum is guarding something that requires the same precautions as the original Ark. But Ethiopia isn't the only location where such claims persist. Certain monasteries in the Sinai Peninsula speak of maintaining ancient knowledge related to Moses' encounter with the divine on Mount Sinai. They describe techniques for approaching sacred objects safely, procedures for handling items that can produce deadly electrical discharge, and warnings about the dangers of unauthorized contact with certain artifacts. These traditions have been maintained for centuries by monks who may not understand the scientific principles behind their protocols, but who faithfully preserve practices that were originally designed to prevent electrocution. The possibility that the Ark's technology has been preserved in some form becomes even more disturbing when you consider the implications for modern times. If the device was indeed capable of generating powerful electrical fields, producing acoustic weapons effects, and serving as a communication system, then whoever possesses it today would have access to technology that might still be ahead of current scientific understanding. The principles that made the Ark function could potentially be reverse engineered and applied to modern weapon systems, communication networks, or energy generation systems. This raises the terrifying possibility that the Ark's disappearance wasn't the end of its story, but merely the beginning of a new chapter. Instead of being lost to history, it might have been secured by groups that understood its value and have been working for centuries to unlock its secrets. The device that once gave ancient Israel a military advantage might now be providing similar advantages to whoever has managed to gain control of it. The evidence for this possibility is necessarily indirect, but it's worth considering. Throughout history, certain organizations have demonstrated technological capabilities that seem to exceed what should have been possible, given the known science of their time. The Templars' engineering achievements, the precision of medieval cathedral construction, the sudden appearance of advanced metallurgy and optics in Renaissance Europe, all suggest access to knowledge that wasn't part of the mainstream scientific tradition. More recently, the persistent rumors about secret government programs investigating ancient technologies, the classified research into acoustic weapons and electrical field effects, the development of non-lethal weapons that use electromagnetic pulses to incapacitate targets, all point toward modern attempts to recreate or understand technologies that might have ancient origins. If researchers today are trying to develop weapons that can produce the same effects described in ancient accounts of the Ark, It's possible they're working from more than just theoretical knowledge. The implications extend far beyond military applications. If the Ark was indeed a sophisticated electrical device, its principles might hold keys to solving modern energy problems, developing new communication technologies, or creating tools for medical diagnosis and treatment. The acoustic properties that allegedly brought down Jericho's walls might be applicable to construction, demolition, or even earthquake prediction. The bioelectrical effects that seem to reveal truth from falsehood might lead to advances in neuroscience or psychology. But accessing this knowledge would require more than just finding the device. It would require understanding the operational principles that allowed Bronze Age priests to safely handle technology that could kill anyone who approached it incorrectly. The protocols preserved in biblical texts and religious traditions might be more than historical curiosities. They might be the instruction manual for operating one of the most advanced devices ever created. This possibility transforms our entire understanding of what we're really investigating. We're not just trying to solve an archaeological mystery or decode ancient religious texts. We're potentially tracking down technology that could revolutionize modern science, and we're competing against organizations that have had a 2,000-year head start in the search. The stakes aren't just academic, they're quite literally world-changing. The question that haunts every serious investigator of this mystery is whether we're already too late. If the Ark has been found and its secrets unlocked, then the technological advantages it provides might already be in use. The rapid acceleration of certain technologies in recent decades, the sudden appearance of capabilities that seem to exceed what gradual scientific progress should have achieved, might not be the result of natural innovation, but of reverse engineering ancient devices that were far more advanced than anyone realized. This brings us to one of the most chilling discoveries in our investigation. Hidden within the biblical construction details are specifications that modern electrical engineers recognize as describing components that wouldn't be reinvented until the development of high-voltage systems in the 19th century. The measurements given for the Ark's dimensions create precise ratios that optimize electrical capacitance. The spacing between the cherubim's wings matches the optimal gap for controlled electrical discharge. The thickness of the gold plating corresponds exactly to what you'd need to contain high-voltage charges without breakthrough. But it gets worse. When you calculate the theoretical electrical capacity of a device built to these specifications using the materials described, you arrive at voltage levels that would be lethal to anyone who made direct contact. We're not talking about a mild shock that would startle someone. We're talking about instantaneous death by electrocution, which is exactly what the biblical accounts describe happening to anyone who touched the Ark improperly. The engineering principles embedded in these ancient instructions are so sophisticated that they suggest knowledge of electrical theory that humanity supposedly didn't possess until 3,000 years later. The construction process itself reveals even more disturbing details. The instructions specify that the gold covering must be applied in a specific way, beaten into sheets and then carefully fitted over the wooden core. This isn't just about creating a beautiful surface. This technique creates a seamless conducting shell that would be essential for maintaining electrical charge. Any gaps or imperfections in the gold covering would create discharge points that could be dangerous to operators and would reduce the device's effectiveness. Even more telling is the requirement that the wooden poles used to carry the Ark must never be removed from their rings. Traditional interpretation suggests this was to maintain the sanctity of the object, but from an engineering perspective, it makes perfect sense as a safety measure. Those wooden poles would serve as permanent insulating handles, ensuring that anyone carrying the device would never accidentally come into contact with the conducting surface. The biblical text even specifies the type of wood to be used for these poles, choosing a variety known for its insulating properties and resistance to electrical breakdown. The mercy seat, that golden lid that sat on top of the Ark, serves a dual purpose that becomes clear when you understand the device's electrical nature. First, it acts as an insulating barrier between the charged interior and anyone who might approach from above. Second, its specific dimensions and positioning create an optimal viewing angle for observing electrical phenomena occurring between the cherubim's wings. The person positioned at the mercy seat would be able to see the electrical discharge clearly while remaining at a safe distance from the high-voltage areas. But perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of the Ark's design is how it would have been powered. Modern analysis suggests the device was designed to accumulate and store atmospheric electrical charge, essentially functioning as a massive lightning rod and capacitor system. The gold covering would attract electrical charge from the atmosphere, while the wooden core would prevent that charge from dissipating into the ground. Over time, the device would build up enormous electrical potential, ready to discharge in spectacular fashion when the conditions were right. This explains several mysterious aspects of the Ark's biblical history that have puzzled scholars for centuries. The device was most active during certain weather conditions, particularly during storms or periods of atmospheric disturbance. The electrical phenomena were stronger in certain locations, especially elevated areas where atmospheric electrical activity would be more intense. The priests who operated the device developed elaborate rituals around weather patterns and atmospheric conditions, not because they were primitive superstitions, but because they were sophisticated operational procedures for managing an electrical device that depended on atmospheric power. The implications of this atmospheric charging system are staggering. Unlike modern electrical devices that require external power sources, the Ark would have been essentially self-charging, drawing energy directly from the Earth's electrical field and atmospheric conditions. This would explain how it could remain operational for extended periods without any apparent power source, and why its effects seem to vary based on environmental conditions that ancient observers couldn't have understood, but which make perfect sense from an electrical engineering perspective. The military applications become even more terrifying when you understand the device's true power source. An electrical weapon that could recharge itself from atmospheric conditions would be incredibly valuable to any army. It would never run out of ammunition, never require supply lines for power, and would actually become more dangerous during the storms and atmospheric disturbances that often accompany military campaigns. The Israelites weren't just carrying a religious symbol into battle. They were deploying a self-powered electrical weapon system that could deliver devastating attacks while remaining operational indefinitely. The acoustic properties that allegedly brought down Jericho's walls take on new significance when viewed through this electrical lens. High-voltage electrical discharges don't just produce light and heat. They also generate powerful acoustic waves that can shatter materials and destabilize structures. If the Ark could produce controlled electrical discharges of sufficient magnitude, it could generate focused acoustic pulses capable of damaging fortifications. The 7-day ritual around Jericho might not have been ceremonial pageantry. It might have been a systematic acoustic bombardment designed to weaken the city's defenses before delivering a final devastating pulse that brought the walls crashing down. But the acoustic capabilities extend beyond military applications. The biblical accounts describe the Ark producing various sounds during different types of operations, from gentle humming during routine functions to thunderous roars during major electrical events. These varying acoustic signatures suggest a device capable of multiple operational modes, each producing different sound patterns that trained operators could interpret and use to monitor the system's status. The priests weren't just performing religious rituals around the Ark. They were operating a complex technological system using audio feedback to guide their actions. The communication functions described in biblical texts become equally fascinating when understood as electrical phenomena. Moses receiving messages while positioned near the Ark might describe a primitive form of electromagnetic communication, with electrical pulses being modulated to convey information. The patterns of electrical discharge that ancient observers interpreted as divine messages might actually have been encoded data streams transmitted through electromagnetic fields. This communication system would explain several otherwise puzzling aspects of the Ark's role in ancient Israel. The device was used not just for receiving messages, but apparently for transmitting them as well. Biblical accounts describe information being communicated across vast distances through processes associated with the Ark, suggesting a communication network that extended far beyond the immediate vicinity of the device. If the Ark could generate controlled electromagnetic pulses, it might have been capable of long-range communication using principles that wouldn't be rediscovered until the development of radio technology. The judicial applications of the Ark reveal perhaps the most sophisticated understanding of bioelectrical effects in the ancient world. The ability to determine truth from falsehood through exposure to the device's electrical field suggests knowledge of how electromagnetic fields affect human nervous systems. Modern research has shown that electrical fields can influence brain activity, affect heart rhythms, and produce measurable changes in human physiology that could potentially be used to detect deception or emotional states. If the ancient operators of the Ark understood these bioelectrical effects, they possessed knowledge of neuroscience that wouldn't be formally recognized until the 20th century. They could use their electrical device to monitor human physiological responses and interpret the results to make determinations about guilt, innocence, or truthfulness. To observers who didn't understand the technology, this would seem like divine judgment, but it might actually have been an early application of what we now call bioelectrical monitoring or primitive lie detection. The medical applications hinted at in various biblical accounts suggest even deeper understanding of electrical effects on human physiology. References to the Ark's presence having healing properties or its energy affecting people's health in various ways might describe therapeutic applications of controlled electrical fields. Modern medicine uses electrical stimulation for everything from pain management to cardiac regulation, and it's possible that the ancient operators of the Ark had discovered similar therapeutic applications for their electrical device. But the most disturbing aspect of all these capabilities is what they suggest about the knowledge base required to design and operate such a system. We're not talking about accidental discoveries or primitive superstitions that happen to produce useful effects. We're talking about sophisticated understanding of electrical theory, bioelectrical effects, acoustic physics, and electromagnetic communication principles that supposedly weren't discovered until thousands of years later. The level of scientific knowledge required to design the Ark as we've described it would have been equivalent to that of a modern electrical engineer with specialized knowledge in multiple fields. The ancient operators would have needed to understand not just basic electrical principles, but advanced concepts like bioelectrical monitoring, electromagnetic communication, acoustic weaponry, and atmospheric electrical phenomena. This knowledge base is so advanced that it raises fundamental questions about the scientific capabilities of ancient civilizations and the sources of their technological knowledge. The construction materials specified for the Ark reveal another layer of sophisticated understanding. The choice of acacia wood wasn't random. This particular wood has electrical properties that make it ideal for use in high-voltage applications. It's naturally resistant to electrical breakdown, maintains its insulating properties even under extreme conditions, and doesn't produce dangerous splinters or fragments when subjected to electrical stress. Modern electrical engineers choose similar materials for exactly the same reasons when building high-voltage equipment. The gold covering serves multiple engineering functions beyond simple conductivity. Gold doesn't oxidize or corrode, ensuring that the conducting surface would remain effective over long periods. It's also highly malleable, allowing it to be shaped into the complex curves and surfaces required for optimal electrical performance. Most importantly, gold has thermal properties that help dissipate the heat generated by high-voltage electrical discharge, preventing the device from overheating during operation. Even the specific alloys mentioned in some biblical accounts show sophisticated metallurgical knowledge. References to gold being mixed with other materials in precise proportions suggest understanding of how different metal combinations affect electrical conductivity, thermal management, and mechanical strength. These aren't the random choices of primitive craftsmen. They're the calculated decisions of engineers who understood the performance requirements of their electrical system. The environmental controls built into the Ark's design reveal awareness of factors that affect electrical device performance. The multiple coverings specified for transport weren't just protective. They would have controlled humidity, temperature, and atmospheric exposure, all of which can dramatically affect the performance of high-voltage electrical systems. The specific fabrics and materials chosen for these coverings have properties that would optimize the device's electrical performance while protecting it from environmental factors that could cause dangerous malfunctions. The operational procedures preserved in biblical texts read like a technical manual when viewed from an engineering perspective. The purification rituals required before approaching the Ark might actually have been grounding procedures designed to discharge static electricity that could interfere with the device's operation or create dangerous conditions for operators. The specific clothing requirements, including metal-free garments and special fabrics, match the safety protocols used today when working with sensitive electrical equipment. The timing requirements for various operations around the Ark correspond to atmospheric conditions that would affect electrical device performance. Certain procedures were only performed during specific weather patterns, at particular times of day, or during certain seasons. These restrictions make perfect sense if you're operating an electrical device that depends on atmospheric conditions for power and whose performance varies based on environmental factors. The personnel requirements are equally revealing. Only specific individuals were authorized to operate the device, and they had to undergo extensive training in what were described as religious preparations, but which sound like technical education programs. These operators had to memorize complex procedures, understand the device's various operational modes, and be able to interpret the different types of electrical phenomena it produced. They weren't just priests performing religious rituals. They were technicians operating sophisticated electrical equipment. The maintenance procedures described in various biblical accounts reveal understanding of the long-term care requirements for electrical devices. The Ark required regular cleaning with specific materials, periodic inspection of its various components, and replacement of worn parts using exact specifications. These aren't the simple maintenance requirements of a decorative object. They're the complex care procedures required to keep a sophisticated electrical system operating safely and effectively over extended periods. The storage requirements when the device wasn't in active use show awareness of the special conditions needed to preserve electrical equipment. The Ark was kept in a specially constructed chamber with specific environmental controls, protected from moisture, temperature extremes, and electromagnetic interference that could affect its performance. The chamber itself was designed with materials and construction techniques that would optimize the device's electrical properties while protecting it from external factors that could cause malfunction or degradation. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of this entire technological analysis is what it suggests about the disappearance of the Ark. If this device was indeed as advanced as the evidence suggests, then its removal from Solomon's temple wasn't just the loss of a religious artifact. It was the theft of technology that was thousands of years ahead of its time, possessing capabilities that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in any civilization that understood how to use it. The timing of the disappearance becomes even more significant when viewed in this context. The device vanished just as the ancient world was entering a period of rapid technological and political change. The rise of new empires, the development of more sophisticated military techniques, and the increasing complexity of international trade and communication would have made the Ark's capabilities incredibly valuable to whoever possessed it. An electrical weapon system, communication device, and lie detection system would have provided enormous advantages to any ruler who could control it. The sophistication required to successfully hide such a device suggests that those responsible understood not just its religious significance, but its technological value. They would have needed to create false trails that would mislead future searchers, establish security systems that could protect the device for centuries, and maintain operational knowledge that would allow them to use the technology when conditions were appropriate. This wasn't a simple matter of moving a religious relic to safety. It was a complex technological operation that required long-term planning and sophisticated understanding of both the device and the political forces that threatened it. The question that should terrify anyone investigating this mystery is whether the disappearance was permanent or temporary. If the Ark was hidden rather than destroyed, if its technological secrets were preserved rather than lost, then somewhere in the world there might be individuals or organizations that have spent centuries studying and developing this ancient technology. The implications of such knowledge being preserved and advanced over 2 millennia are almost too disturbing to contemplate. The preservation of such advanced technology over millennia would require more than just hiding a device in some remote location. It would demand the establishment of secret societies dedicated to protecting and studying the Ark's capabilities, generation after generation, maintaining knowledge that could reshape civilization itself. Consider the organizational structure required for such an undertaking. You would need individuals with the technical expertise to understand electrical engineering principles that wouldn't be formally discovered for thousands of years. You would need security systems capable of protecting the device from discovery by hostile forces, treasure hunters, and even well-meaning archaeologists. Most importantly, you would need a succession plan that could ensure the knowledge survived the death of individual guardians, the rise and fall of empires, and the changing political landscape of human civilization. The historical record offers tantalizing glimpses of organizations that might have possessed such capabilities. Throughout the centuries, certain groups have demonstrated knowledge and resources that seem to exceed what should have been possible, given the official scientific understanding of their time. They've appeared in different cultures, under different names, but always with the same core characteristics: obsessive secrecy, advanced technical knowledge, enormous financial resources, and influence that extends into the highest levels of political and religious power. These organizations have left their mark on history in ways that most people never recognize. The sudden appearance of architectural techniques that seem to violate the known engineering principles of their era. The development of metallurgical processes that produce alloys whose composition remains mysterious even today. The construction of monuments and buildings that incorporate acoustic properties, electrical phenomena, and mathematical relationships that suggest knowledge far beyond what mainstream history attributes to their builders. But it's not just the technical achievements that betray the presence of hidden knowledge. It's the consistent patterns of behavior that appear across different time periods and geographical locations. The same obsession with geometric relationships that appear in the Ark's construction specifications shows up in medieval cathedrals, Renaissance art, and modern architectural projects sponsored by secretive organizations. The same understanding of electrical phenomena that made the Ark function appears in alchemical texts, Masonic symbolism, and the private research of scientists whose official work never acknowledged these advanced concepts. The financial resources required to maintain such secrecy over centuries would be staggering. You couldn't just hide the Ark in some cave and hope for the best. You would need to establish networks of safe houses, create multiple layers of misdirection to confuse potential discoverers, and maintain the infrastructure necessary to move the device quickly if its current location became compromised. This would require not just enormous wealth, but wealth that could be sustained across multiple generations without attracting attention from government authorities or competing organizations. The evidence suggests that such financial networks have indeed existed throughout history. Certain banking families, trading organizations, and religious institutions have maintained resources and influence that seem disproportionate to their official activities. They've financed exploration expeditions to remote locations, sponsored archaeological research in areas connected to ancient temple sites, and invested heavily in technologies that seem unrelated to their public business interests, but which make perfect sense if they're trying to reverse engineer ancient electrical devices. The technological implications become even more disturbing when you consider the rate of advancement that would be possible with a 2,000-year head start. If the Ark's principles were understood and developed continuously from the time of its disappearance, the current state of that technology could be centuries ahead of anything publicly acknowledged. We might be looking at energy generation systems that make current power plants obsolete, communication networks that operate on principles we haven't discovered, and weapons systems that could neutralize entire military forces without leaving conventional evidence of their use. The military applications alone would be worth any price to obtain. An electrical weapon system that could disable electronic equipment, incapacitate personnel without permanent harm, and operate without detectable ammunition or power sources would provide unprecedented tactical advantages. The acoustic capabilities that allegedly brought down Jericho's walls could be developed into systems capable of destroying modern fortifications, disrupting enemy communications, or even triggering seismic events in geologically unstable areas. But the non-military applications might be even more valuable. Communication systems based on electromagnetic principles that predate known radio technology could provide secure, undetectable channels for transmitting information across any distance. Bioelectrical monitoring systems that can detect deception or emotional states could revolutionize everything from criminal justice to psychological treatment. Energy generation systems that draw power directly from atmospheric electrical fields could eliminate dependence on fossil fuels, nuclear reactors, or renewable energy infrastructure. The medical applications suggested by the Ark's bioelectrical effects could represent the most significant advancement in human health since the discovery of antibiotics. If controlled electrical fields can influence human physiology in predictable ways, they might be used to treat neurological disorders, accelerate healing, or even extend human lifespan. The ancient accounts of the Ark's presence having healing properties might not be supernatural claims, but accurate descriptions of advanced medical technology that we're only beginning to understand today. The diagnostic capabilities hinted at in the judicial applications could transform medical practice entirely. If electrical fields can reveal information about internal physiological states, they might be used to detect diseases before symptoms appear, monitor organ function in real time, or identify genetic predispositions to various conditions. The same bioelectrical monitoring that ancient priests used to determine truth from falsehood could become the foundation for medical scanners that make current diagnostic equipment seem primitive by comparison. But accessing these capabilities would require more than just possessing the physical device. It would require understanding the operational principles that allowed Bronze Age priests to safely harness technology that could kill anyone who approached it incorrectly. The safety protocols preserved in ancient texts aren't just historical curiosities. They're potentially the instruction manual for operating one of the most dangerous devices ever created. And anyone who ignores those protocols does so at their own peril. The electrical hazards alone would be lethal to untrained operators. We're talking about voltage levels that could instantly kill anyone who made direct contact with the conducting surfaces. But the dangers extend beyond simple electrocution. High-voltage electrical discharges produce electromagnetic pulses that can interfere with electronic equipment, potentially causing pacemakers to malfunction, disrupting communication systems, or even affecting aircraft navigation. The acoustic effects could cause hearing damage, structural collapse, or physiological trauma to anyone within range of the device's operation. The bioelectrical effects that made the Ark useful for medical and judicial applications could also be incredibly dangerous if not properly controlled. Exposure to strong electrical fields can cause cardiac arrhythmias, neurological damage, or even permanent alterations to brain function. The same technology that could heal might also harm, depending on the intensity of exposure and the specific characteristics of the electrical fields being generated. This dual nature of the technology explains why the ancient safety protocols were so elaborate and why unauthorized access was punished so severely. The device wasn't just sacred because of its religious significance. It was dangerous because of its technological capabilities and the restrictions around its use weren't arbitrary religious requirements, but essential safety measures designed to prevent accidental death or injury. The psychological effects of exposure to the Ark's electrical fields add another layer of complexity to the safety considerations. Strong electromagnetic fields can affect human brain activity, potentially causing hallucinations, altered states of consciousness, or temporary changes in personality and behavior. Ancient accounts of people having religious experiences or receiving divine messages while near the Ark might actually describe neurological effects caused by exposure to powerful electrical fields. These psychological effects could be either beneficial or harmful, depending on the circumstances and the individual's mental state. Controlled exposure might produce therapeutic benefits for certain neurological conditions, enhance cognitive function, or induce states of consciousness that facilitate learning or problem-solving. Uncontrolled exposure could cause severe psychological trauma, permanent brain damage, or complete mental breakdown. The implications for anyone attempting to study or operate the device today are sobering. Modern safety equipment and monitoring systems would be essential for anyone working with technology that generates the electrical fields described in ancient accounts. Even with proper precautions, the risks would be substantial, and the potential for catastrophic accidents would require extreme caution and extensive preparation. But the greatest danger might not be physical harm to individual operators. It might be the geopolitical consequences of the technology falling into the wrong hands. An electrical weapons system capable of disabling modern military equipment could shift the global balance of power overnight. Communication systems that can't be detected or intercepted by conventional means could enable intelligence operations of unprecedented scope and effectiveness. Energy generation technology that makes current power systems obsolete could devastate entire economic sectors, while creating new forms of technological dependence. The strategic value of such capabilities would make the Ark one of the most sought-after objects in human history. Nation-states would commit enormous resources to obtaining it, corporations would risk everything to control its technology, and criminal organizations would kill for access to its capabilities. The device that once gave ancient Israel military advantages could trigger modern conflicts that make historical wars seem insignificant by comparison. This explains why the disappearance of the Ark might have been the most important cover-up in human history. If the device was indeed hidden by people who understood its true nature, they weren't just protecting a religious artifact. They were preventing a technological arms race that could have destabilized civilization itself. By allowing the Ark to become a religious mystery rather than a technological prize, they ensured that future generations would search for a golden box instead of an electrical weapon. But the cover-up required more than just physical concealment. It required the systematic obscuring of the technological knowledge embedded in religious texts, the transformation of engineering specifications into sacred measurements, and the conversion of safety protocols into religious rituals. Over centuries, the technical manual became scripture and the machine became myth. The linguistic analysis of biblical texts reveals how thoroughly this transformation was accomplished. Terms that originally described electrical phenomena were gradually replaced with religious language that obscured their technical meaning. Safety procedures became purification rituals. Operational protocols became sacred ceremonies. The device's multiple functions were reinterpreted as different aspects of divine interaction, rather than various operational modes of a complex technological system. This systematic reinterpretation wasn't accidental. It shows evidence of deliberate planning by individuals who understood both the technology and the importance of hiding its true nature. They created layers of symbolic meaning that would satisfy religious interpretation while preserving the essential technical information for those who knew how to decode it. The result is a text that can be read as either spiritual literature or engineering documentation, depending on the reader's knowledge and perspective. The mathematical relationships embedded in the Ark's construction specifications provide the clearest evidence of this dual purpose in coding. The dimensions, proportions, and material specifications that appear throughout biblical descriptions of the device create precise mathematical ratios that optimize electrical performance, while also conforming to symbolic patterns that support religious interpretation. These numbers work simultaneously as engineering calculations and sacred geometry, allowing the technical information to be preserved within a religious framework. The preservation of this information required extraordinary foresight and sophisticated understanding of how knowledge is transmitted across generations. The individuals responsible had to anticipate how languages would evolve, how religious interpretation would develop, and how technological understanding would advance over thousands of years. They had to create an encoding system that would preserve essential information while remaining invisible to casual readers and resistant to accidental corruption through copying and translation. The success of their efforts is evident in the fact that scholars have been studying these texts for centuries without recognizing their technological significance. The information was hidden so effectively that even when electrical engineering principles were rediscovered in the modern era, researchers didn't immediately recognize that ancient texts contained descriptions of similar technology. The cover-up was so complete that the Ark's true nature remained concealed even after humanity developed the scientific knowledge necessary to understand it. But the encoding system also included mechanisms for eventual revelation. The mathematical relationships become obvious once you know what to look for. The technical details emerge clearly when approached from an engineering perspective. The safety protocols make perfect sense when interpreted as electrical safety procedures. The information was hidden from casual discovery, but preserved for intentional investigation by individuals with the proper knowledge and motivation. This suggests that the disappearance of the Ark wasn't intended to be permanent. The device was hidden, not destroyed, and the knowledge was encoded, not eliminated. The individuals responsible created a system that would preserve both the technology and the information necessary to understand it, waiting for a time when conditions would be appropriate for its recovery and renewed use. The question that haunts modern investigators is whether that time has already arrived. The rapid advancement of electrical engineering, the development of high-voltage systems, and the growing understanding of bioelectrical effects have created the scientific foundation necessary to comprehend the Ark's technology. The global political situation, with its complex international tensions and technological arms races, might provide the motivation for powerful organizations to seek advanced weapons systems regardless of their origins. If the Ark has indeed been recovered and its technology successfully reverse-engineered, the implications for modern civilization are staggering. We might be witnessing the deployment of ancient electrical weapons in contemporary conflicts without recognizing their true nature. Communication systems based on electromagnetic principles that predate radio technology might already be in use by intelligence agencies or military organizations. Energy generation systems that draw power from atmospheric electrical fields might be powering classified research facilities or secret military installations. The evidence for such applications would necessarily be classified at the highest levels of government secrecy. No nation would publicly acknowledge possessing technology derived from ancient sources, especially if that technology provided significant military or economic advantages. The development of such capabilities would be hidden within conventional research programs, disguised as natural scientific advancement rather than reverse engineering of recovered artifacts. But the signatures of such technology might be detectable to those who know what to look for. Unexplained electromagnetic phenomena in areas where classified research is conducted. Military operations that achieve results seemingly impossible with conventional weapons. Communication systems that operate with security characteristics that exceed what current encryption technology should provide. Energy generation facilities that produce more power than their apparent fuel consumption should allow. The acoustic weapons that allegedly brought down Jericho's walls might already be deployed in modern military applications. The development of so-called non-lethal weapons that use sound waves to disperse crowds disable equipment, or incapacitate personnel could represent the rediscovery of principles that were first implemented in the Ark's design. The bioelectrical monitoring systems that allowed ancient priests to detect deception might have evolved into advanced interrogation techniques or intelligence gathering methods. The medical applications could be even more widespread. The development of electromagnetic therapy devices, the use of electrical stimulation for pain management, and the growing understanding of how electrical fields affect human physiology might all represent the gradual reintroduction of knowledge that was first codified in the Ark's operational procedures. What appears to be cutting-edge medical research might actually be the careful reconstruction of therapeutic techniques that were perfected thousands of years ago. The implications extend beyond current technology into future development. If the Ark's principles are indeed being studied and applied, they could lead to breakthroughs that seem to come from nowhere, but which actually represent the culmination of centuries of secret research. Energy systems that make current power generation obsolete. Communication networks that operate on entirely new principles. Weapons that can achieve effects previously thought impossible. Medical treatments that seem miraculous, but which are actually based on ancient knowledge that was preserved through the millennia. The race to control such technology could already be underway, hidden within the classified research programs of major powers and the secret projects of powerful organizations. The Ark that once gave ancient Israel military supremacy might now be providing similar advantages to whoever has managed to unlock its secrets. The device that disappeared from Solomon's temple might have reappeared in a modern laboratory, its golden surface reflecting the lights of advanced scientific equipment as researchers work to understand principles that were old when the pyramids were young. But the greatest mystery remains the identity of those who have guarded this secret for over 2 millennia. If the Ark was indeed hidden by ancient conspirators who understood its true nature, their successors might still be among us, working in shadows to protect and develop technology that could reshape human civilization. They could be operating within government agencies, controlling private research institutions, or maintaining independent organizations that have survived for centuries by adapting to changing political and technological conditions. These modern guardians of ancient knowledge would possess resources, influence, and capabilities that extend far beyond what any conventional organization could maintain. They would have access to research facilities that don't appear on any public records, funding sources that can't be traced through normal financial channels, and personnel with expertise in fields that officially don't exist. They would operate with security measures that make government classification systems seem transparent by comparison, maintaining secrets that could trigger global conflicts if revealed prematurely. The question that should terrify anyone investigating this mystery is not whether the Ark still exists, but whether its guardians are still watching. If powerful organizations have spent centuries protecting this technology, they would view any serious investigation as a potential threat to their security. Researchers who get too close to the truth might find their funding mysteriously withdrawn, their access to critical information suddenly restricted, or their careers derailed by circumstances that seem coincidental, but which follow patterns too consistent to be accidental. The disappearance of archaeologists who were investigating temple sites connected to the Ark's history, the suppression of research that challenges conventional interpretations of ancient technology, and the classification of documents that might contain relevant information all suggest that someone is actively working to keep this knowledge hidden. The cover-up that began with the Ark's disappearance from Solomon's temple might still be ongoing, maintained by organizations that understand the catastrophic consequences of allowing this technology to become public knowledge. But the most disturbing possibility is that the cover-up isn't being maintained to protect humanity from dangerous technology. It might be maintained to protect the technological advantages of those who control it. The Ark's disappearance might not have been about preventing a catastrophe. It might have been about ensuring that the catastrophe would be controlled by the right people, deployed at the right time, and used to achieve objectives that serve the interests of a secret elite rather than the broader human community, if that possibility is true, then every major technological advancement of the past century might need to be re-examined through an entirely different lens. The sudden acceleration of electrical engineering in the late 1800s, the mysterious breakthroughs in electromagnetic theory that seemed to come from nowhere, the development of wireless communication systems that exceeded what gradual scientific progress should have achieved. All of these could represent the gradual reintroduction of knowledge that was never actually lost, merely hidden and carefully managed by those who understood its true value. The timing of these technological revelations becomes even more suspicious when you examine the historical context. Major breakthroughs in electrical engineering often coincided with periods of international tension, when nations were desperately seeking military advantages that could tip the balance of power. The development of radar during World War II, the sudden appearance of advanced communication systems during the Cold War, the emergence of electromagnetic pulse weapons in recent decades, each of these represents capabilities that seem to exceed what natural scientific progression should have produced, especially given the limited timeframes involved. But it's not just the timing that raises questions. It's the specific characteristics of these technologies that mirror the capabilities described in ancient accounts of the Ark. Modern military systems that can disable electronic equipment through electromagnetic pulses operate on principles that are remarkably similar to what witnesses described when unauthorized individuals approach the Ark. Contemporary acoustic weapons that can incapacitate targets or damage structures use sound generation techniques that echo the methods allegedly employed at Jericho. Advanced biomonitoring systems that can detect deception or emotional states through electromagnetic field analysis represent a technological fulfillment of the judicial capabilities attributed to the ancient device. The medical applications provide perhaps the most compelling evidence that ancient knowledge is being systematically reintroduced into modern practice. The use of electrical stimulation for therapeutic purposes, the development of electromagnetic field therapy for treating various conditions, the growing understanding of how bioelectrical systems affect human health. All of these represent a convergence toward the same bioelectrical manipulation capabilities that made the Ark useful for healing applications. What appears to be cutting-edge medical research might actually be the careful reconstruction of therapeutic techniques that were perfected millennia ago and preserved through secret channels. The energy generation implications are equally profound. If the Ark could indeed draw power from atmospheric electrical fields, then the principles behind its operation could revolutionize how we approach power generation entirely. The growing interest in harvesting atmospheric electricity, the development of systems that can capture and store electrical energy from environmental sources, the research into technologies that can generate power without conventional fuel sources, all of these could represent attempts to recreate the self-charging capabilities that made the ancient device so strategically valuable. But the most terrifying aspect of this technological convergence is what it suggests about the timeline for full revelation. If ancient knowledge is being gradually reintroduced through seemingly natural scientific advancement, then we might be approaching a point where the complete capabilities of the original device could be reconstructed and deployed. The individual components, electromagnetic weapons, acoustic systems, bioelectrical monitoring, atmospheric power generation, are already being developed separately. The integration of these technologies into a unified system would represent a quantum leap in capability that could fundamentally alter the global balance of power. The organizations capable of achieving such integration would need resources and expertise that extend far beyond what any publicly acknowledged institution possesses. They would require access to the original technical specifications preserved from ancient times, the financial capacity to fund decades of classified research, and the political influence necessary to prevent detection by intelligence agencies or rival organizations. Most importantly, they would need the institutional continuity to maintain such projects across multiple generations of researchers and administrators. The historical evidence suggests that such organizations have indeed existed throughout the centuries. The consistent patterns of advanced technological knowledge appearing in different cultures, the mysterious funding sources behind certain archaeological expeditions, the suppression of research that challenges conventional interpretations of ancient capabilities, all point toward coordinated efforts by groups that understand the true significance of historical artifacts and are working systematically to recover and develop their technological potential. The Knights Templar provide one of the most documented examples of such an organization. Their excavations beneath Solomon's Temple, their sudden accumulation of vast wealth through unexplained means, their development of advanced banking and communication systems that exceeded what medieval technology should have allowed, all suggest access to knowledge or resources that weren't part of the mainstream historical record. When they were finally suppressed, they had sufficient warning to hide their most valuable discoveries, and those hidden treasures have never been recovered by conventional archaeological methods. The Masonic traditions that claim descent from the temple builders preserve symbolic and ritual knowledge that includes remarkably specific references to electrical phenomena, electromagnetic principles, and bioelectrical effects. Their initiation ceremonies describe interactions with forces that sound suspiciously like controlled electrical discharge. Their architectural symbolism incorporates geometric relationships that optimize electromagnetic field generation. Their traditional tools and measurements include specifications that would be essential for constructing high-voltage electrical systems using ancient materials and techniques. Even more intriguing are the persistent connections between Masonic organizations and major technological breakthroughs throughout history. Key figures in the development of electrical engineering, electromagnetic theory, and wireless communication often had documented ties to Masonic lodges or similar secret societies. The timing of their discoveries, the specific nature of their innovations, and the rapid practical implementation of their theoretical work all suggest access to knowledge sources that weren't available through conventional scientific channels. The modern implications of such connections are staggering. If secret societies have indeed preserved and developed ancient technological knowledge over centuries, they might now possess capabilities that are decades or even centuries ahead of publicly acknowledged science. The gradual revelation of these technologies, through seemingly independent research breakthroughs, could be a carefully orchestrated process designed to introduce advanced capabilities without revealing their true origins or the extent of the knowledge possessed by their guardians. The strategic advantages provided by such technological superiority would be unprecedented in human history. Nations or organizations with access to energy systems that don't require conventional fuel sources would possess enormous economic leverage over those dependent on traditional power generation. Military forces equipped with electromagnetic weapons that can disable enemy electronics without leaving physical evidence would have tactical capabilities that could neutralize conventional military advantages. Intelligence agencies with access to bioelectrical monitoring systems that can detect deception with perfect accuracy would possess interrogation and recruitment capabilities that make current techniques seem primitive. But the true power might lie not in any single technological application, but in the integrated system that combines all of these capabilities into a unified platform. An organization that possessed the complete technological legacy of the Ark wouldn't just have access to individual advanced systems. They would have access to a technology platform that could simultaneously generate its own power, communicate across any distance, monitor human physiological states, deliver targeted electromagnetic or acoustic attacks, and operate indefinitely without external support or maintenance. The military applications of such an integrated system would make conventional warfare obsolete. The communication capabilities would provide secure, undetectable channels for coordinating operations across global distances. The energy generation would eliminate dependence on supply lines or fuel sources that could be targeted by enemies. The biomonitoring capabilities would enable the identification of enemy agents, the verification of ally loyalty, and the assessment of population morale with unprecedented accuracy. The civilian applications could be even more transformative. Medical systems that could diagnose and treat conditions through bioelectrical manipulation would revolutionize healthcare. Energy generation that could power entire cities without environmental impact would solve climate change and resource scarcity simultaneously. Communication networks that couldn't be intercepted or disrupted would enable new forms of global coordination and cooperation. But accessing these capabilities would require more than just understanding the technology. It would require mastering the operational knowledge that allowed ancient priests to safely harness forces that could instantly kill anyone who made a mistake. The safety protocols preserved in religious texts aren't just historical curiosities. They represent the accumulated wisdom of generations of operators who learned through trial and error, and sometimes fatal accidents. How to work with technology that operates at the very limits of what human beings can safely control. The electrical hazards alone would require extraordinary precautions. The voltage levels described in biblical accounts would be lethal to anyone who made direct contact with the conducting surfaces. But modern safety equipment and monitoring systems would provide protection that ancient operators never had. Insulating materials that didn't exist in the Bronze Age, electromagnetic field detectors that could warn of dangerous conditions, automated shutdown systems that could prevent catastrophic overloads. All of these would make it possible to operate the technology with much greater safety margins than ancient priests ever enjoyed. The electromagnetic effects would require different types of precautions. The fields generated by the device could interfere with electronic equipment, potentially causing computers to malfunction, communication systems to fail, or medical devices to operate incorrectly. Modern facilities designed to contain such effects would need extensive electromagnetic shielding, isolated power systems, and backup communication networks that could continue operating even under extreme electromagnetic conditions. The acoustic effects would require yet another set of safety measures. The sound levels generated by high-voltage electrical discharges could cause permanent hearing damage, while focused acoustic pulses could potentially cause structural damage to buildings or vehicles in the vicinity. Proper acoustic isolation and monitoring would be essential to prevent accidental harm to personnel or damage to nearby facilities. But the bioelectrical effects might require the most sophisticated safety protocols of all. The same electromagnetic fields that could provide therapeutic benefits or enable lie detection could also cause cardiac arrhythmias, neurological damage, or psychological trauma if not properly controlled. Personnel working with the device would need continuous medical monitoring, specialized training in recognizing the early signs of electromagnetic field exposure, and immediate access to medical treatment designed specifically for bioelectrical injuries. The complexity of these safety requirements explains why the ancient operational procedures were so elaborate, and why unauthorized access was considered so dangerous. The device wasn't just sacred because of its religious significance, it was lethal because of its technological capabilities, and the restrictions around its use weren't arbitrary religious requirements, but essential safety measures developed through centuries of experience with technology that could kill without warning. The modern reconstruction of such safety protocols would require expertise from multiple scientific disciplines. Electrical engineers would need to understand the device's power generation and distribution systems. Biomedical specialists would need to assess the physiological effects of electromagnetic field exposure. Acoustic engineers would need to analyze the sound generation characteristics and design appropriate containment systems. Materials. Scientists would need to develop new insulating and shielding materials capable of withstanding the extreme conditions generated by the device. The integration of all these safety systems into a coherent operational framework would represent one of the most complex engineering challenges ever attempted. The ancient priests who operated the original device had the advantage of generations of accumulated experience, passed down through carefully maintained training programs that preserved both the technical knowledge and the hard-learned safety lessons. Modern operators would need to reconstruct this knowledge base from scratch, potentially making fatal mistakes that ancient operators had already learned to avoid. The psychological preparation required for working with such technology would be as important as the technical training. Ancient accounts describe the profound psychological effects that exposure to the ark's electromagnetic fields could produce. Operators needed to be mentally prepared for experiences that could include hallucinations, altered states of consciousness, or direct neurological effects that modern science is only beginning to understand. The selection and training of personnel capable of working safely with such technology would require psychological screening and preparation programs that have no equivalent in current practice. The security requirements for protecting such technology would be unprecedented in their scope and complexity. The device couldn't be housed in any conventional facility. It would require specialized construction designed to contain electromagnetic effects, prevent acoustic propagation, and shield against detection by external monitoring systems. The facility would need independent power systems, isolated communication networks, and security measures that could prevent unauthorized access while maintaining the operational flexibility necessary for research and development activities. The personnel's security requirements would be equally challenging. Anyone with access to the technology would possess knowledge that could destabilize global power structures if revealed. The screening, monitoring, and management of such personnel would require security protocols that exceed anything currently used for nuclear weapons or other strategic technologies. The psychological stress of maintaining such secrets over extended periods could itself become a security vulnerability, requiring ongoing psychological support and monitoring that would add another layer of complexity to the entire operation. The financial requirements for developing and maintaining such capabilities would strain the resources of even the wealthiest organizations or nations. The research and development costs alone would likely exceed the budgets of most government agencies. The construction of appropriate facilities would require specialized materials and techniques that don't exist in the commercial marketplace. The ongoing operational costs would include not just the direct expenses of running the program, but the indirect costs of maintaining the security and secrecy necessary to prevent detection by rival organizations or hostile intelligence services. But perhaps the most challenging aspect would be maintaining operational continuity across the decades or centuries that might be required to fully understand and develop the technology. Ancient organizations that preserved this knowledge had the advantage of religious or cultural frameworks that provided motivation and structure for multi-generational commitment to the project. Modern organizations would need to create institutional structures capable of maintaining focus and resources across changes in leadership, political circumstances, and technological development that could make the original objectives seem irrelevant or impossible. The historical precedents suggest that such long-term technological development programs are possible, but only under very specific conditions. The organizations that have successfully maintained secret knowledge across centuries have typically combined religious or ideological motivation with practical benefits that justify the costs and risks involved. They've developed internal cultures that reward loyalty and discretion, while providing members with access to knowledge, resources, or opportunities that aren't available through conventional channels. The modern equivalent would need to offer similar incentives while adapting to contemporary conditions that make traditional secret society structures much more difficult to maintain. Government surveillance capabilities, financial monitoring systems, and communication technologies that didn't exist in previous centuries make it much harder to maintain organizational secrecy over extended periods. Any group attempting to develop advanced technology based on ancient knowledge would need to create new forms of institutional structure that could operate effectively within the constraints of modern security environments. The technological infrastructure required for such organizations would itself represent a significant challenge. They would need communication systems that couldn't be monitored by government agencies, financial networks that couldn't be traced through conventional banking systems, and research facilities that couldn't be detected through satellite surveillance or electromagnetic monitoring. The development of such infrastructure would require capabilities that approach or exceed those of major intelligence agencies, creating a chicken and egg problem where advanced technology would be needed to develop the advanced technology being sought. The recruitment and training of personnel for such organizations would face similar challenges. The expertise required to understand and develop technology based on ancient electrical engineering principles would need to be acquired through conventional educational and professional channels. But the application of that expertise to classified projects would require individuals willing to abandon normal career paths and accept the risks associated with working on illegal or quasi-legal research programs. The psychological profiles of individuals willing to make such commitments would likely include high levels of intellectual curiosity, tolerance for risk and uncertainty, and motivation by factors other than conventional, professional, or financial rewards. The selection process would need to identify such individuals while avoiding detection by intelligence agencies that monitor recruitment activities by potentially hostile organizations. The training programs would need to combine conventional technical education with specialized knowledge that exists nowhere in the mainstream scientific community. Trainees would need to learn not just electrical engineering principles, but the specific applications of those principles to technology that operates on design principles that aren't taught in any university program. They would need to develop expertise in safety protocols that have no equivalent in current practice, operational procedures that have been preserved only in ancient texts, and maintenance techniques that were developed for technology that officially doesn't exist. The research and development challenges would be equally formidable. Even with access to the original device and complete understanding of its construction principles, modern reconstruction would require solving materials, science problems that might not have solutions using currently available technologies. The specific alloys, insulating compounds, and manufacturing techniques used in the original construction might need to be recreated using processes that have been lost for centuries. The testing and validation procedures would present their own unique difficulties. Unlike conventional technology development, where prototypes can be tested openly and results can be published for peer review, development of technology based on ancient principles would need to be conducted in complete secrecy, using validation methods that couldn't be detected by external monitoring. The risks associated with testing high-voltage electrical systems, acoustic weapons, and bioelectrical devices would require safety protocols that have no precedent in current engineering practice. But the greatest challenge might be determining when and how to deploy such technology once it had been successfully developed. The strategic advantages provided by advanced electrical weapons, communication systems, and energy generation would be so significant that their introduction could destabilize global power structures and trigger conflicts that make current international tensions seem trivial by comparison. The decision to reveal such capabilities would need to consider not just the immediate tactical advantages, but the long-term consequences for global stability and human civilization. The timing of such revelations would be critical. Introducing advanced technology too early could trigger arms races or conflicts that would prevent its beneficial applications from being realized. Waiting too long could allow rival organizations to develop similar capabilities independently, eliminating the strategic advantages while increasing the risks of uncontrolled proliferation. The optimal timing would depend on global political conditions, technological development trends, and the readiness of human civilization to handle the transformative effects of such advanced capabilities. The implications extend far beyond military or strategic considerations. If the Ark's technology could indeed provide unlimited clean energy, instantaneous global communication, and advanced medical capabilities, its development could solve many of the most pressing challenges facing human civilization. Climate change, resource scarcity, disease, and isolation could all become manageable problems if the technological principles embedded in ancient designs could be successfully adapted to modern applications. But the same technology that could solve these problems could also create new forms of control and manipulation that would make current concerns about privacy, autonomy, and human rights seem insignificant. Bioelectrical monitoring systems that could detect thoughts and emotions would make traditional concepts of mental privacy obsolete. Communication networks that couldn't be monitored or blocked by conventional means could enable new forms of social organization that bypass existing governmental and legal structures. Energy systems that provided unlimited power could eliminate the economic constraints that currently limit individual and organizational capabilities. The social and political transformations that would result from such technological capabilities would be at least as significant as the technological achievements themselves. Current power structures, based on control of resources, information, and military force would become irrelevant if individuals or small groups could access unlimited energy, uncontrolled communication, and weapon systems that could neutralize conventional military advantages. The transition to such a transformed society would likely be chaotic and potentially violent as existing power structures attempted to maintain their relevance and new forms of organization emerged to take advantage of the changed technological landscape. The organizations that controlled the advanced technology would find themselves in the position of deciding not just how to use their capabilities, but how to manage the social transformation that would inevitably result from their deployment. The responsibility associated with such power would be unprecedented in human history. The decisions made by those who control advanced technology based on ancient principles could determine the future trajectory of human civilization for centuries or millennia to come. The choice between using such capabilities to benefit all humanity or to maintain the dominance of a select few would represent one of the most significant moral and practical challenges ever faced by any organization or individual. The historical precedents for making such choices are not encouraging. Throughout history, advanced technology has typically been used first for military purposes, then gradually adapted for civilian applications as the strategic advantages diminished or became widely available. The organizations that have controlled such technology have generally used it primarily to maintain and extend their own power, with broader societal benefits emerging only as secondary consequences of competitive pressures or strategic necessities. But the scale of the technology potentially embedded in the Ark's design would make such traditional patterns of development and deployment inadequate or even dangerous. The capabilities described in ancient accounts would provide such overwhelming advantages that traditional competitive pressures might not be sufficient to ensure broad distribution of benefits. The organizations that gain control of such technology might find themselves with the power to dominate human civilization indefinitely, with no effective constraints on their use of that power. The question that haunts this entire investigation is whether such power has already been achieved. If the Ark has indeed been recovered and its technology successfully developed, the current global situation might already reflect the influence of capabilities that operate far beyond publicly acknowledged scientific understanding. The rapid pace of technological change, the increasing concentration of power in the hands of secretive organizations, and the growing capability of small groups to influence global events could all be symptoms of a world where ancient electrical engineering principles have been successfully integrated into modern technology platforms. The signs would necessarily be subtle and indirect. No organization possessing such overwhelming technological advantages would reveal them openly until the global situation required their deployment. But the signatures might be detectable to those who understood what to look for. Unexplained technological breakthroughs that seem to exceed what gradual scientific progress should achieve. The emergence of organizations with capabilities that can't be explained by their apparent resources, and the increasing pace of global change that suggests forces operating beyond the constraints that have historically limited human development. If such forces are indeed at work, then the ultimate question becomes not whether the Ark of the Covenant was a machine, but whether that machine is still running, still generating the power that once made ancient Israel a dominant force in the Middle East. still waiting in some hidden facility for the moment when its guardians decide that the time has come to reshape human civilization according to principles that were old when Moses first received the blueprints in the wilderness of Sinai. The golden box that disappeared from Solomon's temple might never have been lost at all. It might simply have been relocated, upgraded, and integrated into systems that would make its original capabilities seem primitive by comparison. The technology that once struck down Uzzah for touching its surface without authorization might now be capable of monitoring and influencing human behavior on a global scale. The device that brought down the walls of Jericho might now be powerful enough to bring down entire civilizations, or lift them to heights that would seem impossible by any conventional measure of human potential. As we stand at the threshold of an age where artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and biotechnology are converging to create capabilities that seem almost magical, it's worth considering whether we're witnessing natural scientific evolution or the gradual revelation of knowledge that has been carefully preserved and developed for thousands of years by guardians who understood that the true power of the Ark of the Covenant was never its religious significance, but its technological potential to transform human civilization in ways that we are only beginning to comprehend. The investigation continues, but the questions have moved far beyond simple archaeology or biblical interpretation. We're now confronting the possibility that the most advanced technology in human history has been hidden in plain sight, disguised as religious mythology, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready to understand that the age of miracles never ended. It was simply classified at levels so high that even those who witnessed its effects couldn't recognize what they were really seeing. The investigation reaches a critical juncture when we examine the metallurgical evidence hidden within biblical descriptions. The specifications for the ark's construction don't just describe religious ornamentation. They detail a precise recipe for creating what modern materials science would recognize as an advanced electrical capacitor system. The gold overlay wasn't chosen for its beauty or symbolic value. It was selected for electrical properties that Bronze Age civilizations supposedly didn't understand. When you analyze the specific thickness requirements given for the gold plating, you discover measurements that correspond exactly to what modern electrical engineers call the skin depth for electromagnetic field penetration. This isn't coincidence. This is sophisticated understanding of how electromagnetic fields interact with conducting materials, knowledge that wasn't formally recognized by mainstream science until the development of Maxwell's equations in the 1860s. The acacia wood core presents an even more intriguing puzzle. Modern analysis of this particular wood species reveals electrical properties that make it ideal for high-voltage applications. Its dielectric constant, breakdown voltage, and thermal stability characteristics are precisely what you'd want in an insulating material designed to contain massive electrical charges. The ancient specifications didn't just happen to choose good materials. They selected the optimal materials for electrical engineering applications that wouldn't be understood for millennia. But the most shocking discovery comes when you examine the joining techniques described for the ark's construction. The biblical accounts specify that the gold covering must be seamless, beaten from single sheets without joints or connections that could create weak points. Modern high-voltage engineering uses identical techniques for exactly the same reasons. Any discontinuity in the conducting surface creates points where electrical discharge can occur unpredictably, potentially causing catastrophic failure or dangerous arcing. The dimensional relationships encoded in the arc specifications reveal mathematical principles that wouldn't be formally recognized until the development of electromagnetic field theory. The length-to-width ratios create optimal conditions for electrical field distribution. The height measurements establish precise spacing for controlled electrical discharge. The positioning of the cherubim creates the exact electrode configuration needed for stable arc generation. These aren't approximate relationships that might accidentally produce useful results. These are precise calculations that optimize electrical performance according to principles that require advanced mathematical understanding of electromagnetic field behavior. The people who created these specifications possessed knowledge of electrical engineering that matches or exceeds modern university-level education in the field. The materials science becomes even more sophisticated when you examine the specific alloys mentioned in various biblical accounts. References to gold mixed with other metals in precise proportions describe metallurgical techniques for creating alloys with specific electrical conductivity, thermal management, and mechanical strength characteristics. These formulations represent solutions to engineering problems that modern materials scientists still struggle with when designing high-performance electrical systems. The thermal management aspects of the design reveal understanding of heat dissipation principles that are crucial for high-power electrical devices. The specific surface textures, material thicknesses, and geometric configurations described in ancient texts create optimal conditions for managing the enormous heat loads generated by high-voltage electrical discharge. Without proper thermal management, such a device would quickly overheat and suffer catastrophic failure. The safety systems built into the Ark's design demonstrate awareness of electrical hazards that goes far beyond simple trial and error learning. The insulating barriers, grounding systems, and approach protocols described in biblical texts represent a comprehensive safety framework that addresses every major electrical hazard associated with high-voltage systems. The ancient operators understood arc flash dangers, step potential hazards, and electromagnetic field exposure risks that modern electrical workers learn about through formal safety training programs. The operational procedures preserved in religious texts read like a technical manual when interpreted from an electrical engineering perspective. The specific environmental conditions required for certain operations correspond to atmospheric electrical phenomena that affect high-voltage system performance. The timing restrictions for various procedures align with weather patterns and atmospheric conditions that would influence electrical field strength and discharge characteristics. The personnel qualifications described for arc operators include training requirements that make sense only if you're dealing with dangerous electrical equipment, the elaborate preparation rituals, the specialized clothing requirements, and the strict protocols for approach and handling all serve to minimize electrical hazards that could be fatal to untrained individuals. These weren't arbitrary religious requirements. They were essential safety measures developed through experience with technology that could kill without warning. The maintenance procedures described in various accounts reveal understanding of the long-term degradation processes that affect electrical equipment. The cleaning requirements, inspection protocols, and replacement schedules for various components match the maintenance needs of modern high-voltage systems. The ancient operators understood that electrical equipment requires ongoing care to maintain safe and effective operation over extended periods. The storage and transportation requirements specified for the Ark address every major concern associated with moving sensitive electrical equipment. The environmental controls, vibration isolation, and electromagnetic shielding described in biblical accounts represent solutions to problems that modern engineers face when transporting high-voltage systems. The ancient specifications weren't just about protecting a religious artifact. They were about maintaining the operational integrity of sophisticated electrical equipment under adverse conditions. The power generation system implied by the Ark's design represents perhaps the most advanced aspect of the entire technology. The device appears to have been designed as an atmospheric electrical energy harvesting system, capable of accumulating and storing electrical charge from environmental sources. This would explain its seemingly unlimited operational capability and its independence from conventional power sources. Modern research into atmospheric electrical phenomena has revealed that the Earth maintains a constant electrical field with enormous energy potential. The techniques for harvesting this energy are still in experimental stages, but the principles are well understood. A device designed according to the Ark's specifications would be capable of tapping into this atmospheric electrical reservoir, essentially providing unlimited power for its various functions. The implications of such a power system are staggering. Unlike conventional electrical devices that require external power sources, the ark would have been essentially self-charging, drawing energy directly from environmental electrical fields. This would make it independent of fuel supplies, power plants, or any other conventional energy infrastructure. It would remain operational indefinitely as long as atmospheric electrical conditions remained within normal parameters. The weapon system applications become terrifying when you understand the power levels that such atmospheric energy harvesting could theoretically achieve. The electrical charges that could be accumulated and stored in a device of the ark's size would be capable of generating electromagnetic pulses powerful enough to disable electronic equipment across vast areas. The acoustic effects produced by such electrical discharges could generate sound waves capable of structural damage or physiological harm to anyone within range. The communication capabilities implied by such power levels would enable electromagnetic signal transmission across intercontinental distances. The bioelectrical monitoring systems could operate with sensitivity levels that would make deception detection virtually impossible to defeat. The energy projection capabilities could provide power to remote locations without conventional transmission infrastructure. But the most disturbing aspect of this technology is what it suggests about the knowledge base required for its development. We're not talking about accidental discoveries or gradual technological evolution. We're talking about sophisticated understanding of atmospheric electrical phenomena, electromagnetic field theory, materials science, and bioelectrical effects that represents knowledge centuries ahead of what mainstream history attributes to ancient civilizations. The source of such advanced knowledge becomes the central mystery. Biblical accounts attribute the ark's design to divine instruction. But what if those instructions actually came from a terrestrial source, with technological capabilities far beyond what should have existed in the ancient world? The precision of the specifications, the sophistication of the engineering principles, and the integration of multiple advanced technologies suggest design by individuals or organizations with access to scientific knowledge that wouldn't be rediscovered by conventional human research for thousands of years. The global context of similar technologies appearing in widely separated ancient cultures suggests that this wasn't an isolated development. References to electrical-like phenomena in Egyptian, Indian, and Mesopotamian texts hint at a broader technological tradition that may have been shared across ancient civilizations. The consistent patterns of electromagnetic effects, acoustic weapons, and bioelectrical applications appearing in diverse cultural contexts point toward a common source of advanced knowledge. The timing of these technological appearances becomes significant when correlated with major cultural and environmental changes in the ancient world. The period around 3000–2000 BCE saw rapid advancement in multiple civilizations simultaneously, with sophisticated engineering, mathematics, and astronomical knowledge appearing without clear developmental precursors. This pattern suggests external influence or knowledge transfer from sources not preserved in conventional historical records. The deliberate obscuring of technological information within religious frameworks appears to have been a systematic process across multiple cultures. Technical specifications were embedded in mythological narratives. Safety procedures were transformed into religious rituals, and operational knowledge was preserved through ceremonial practices that maintained essential information while hiding its practical significance. This systematic encoding suggests coordinated effort by individuals who understood both the technology and the importance of preserving it through periods when direct technical knowledge might be lost or suppressed. The encoding systems were sophisticated enough to preserve essential information while making it invisible to casual observers who lacked the technical background to recognize its significance. The preservation mechanisms built into these encoding systems demonstrate remarkable foresight about how knowledge transmission works across generations and cultural changes. The information was structured to survive translation between languages, adaptation to different religious frameworks, and copying by scribes who didn't understand the technical content they were preserving. The redundancy built into these preservation systems suggests that the original developers understood the fragility of knowledge and took extraordinary measures to ensure its survival. Multiple independent preservation channels, cross-references between different textual traditions, and embedded verification systems all point toward a comprehensive effort to protect crucial information against loss or corruption. The activation mechanisms built into these encoding systems indicate that the preservation wasn't intended to be permanent concealment. The technical information becomes increasingly obvious as the reader's knowledge base expands. The mathematical relationships emerge clearly when approached with appropriate analytical tools. The engineering principles become unmistakable when examined from the proper perspective. This graduated revelation system suggests that the knowledge was hidden from premature discovery while being preserved for eventual recovery by individuals or civilizations with sufficient technical sophistication to understand and safely apply it. The encoding served as both protection and preparation, ensuring that the information would remain accessible to qualified investigators while remaining invisible to those who might misuse it. The modern implications of this revelation system are profound. If the encoding was designed to become transparent to individuals with advanced electrical engineering knowledge, then the current era represents the first time in human history when the technical information could be fully decoded and understood. We may be living through the activation period that the original developers anticipated when they created their preservation systems. The convergence of modern electrical engineering capabilities with ancient textual analysis tools has created conditions where the ark's true nature can be recognized and its technological principles reconstructed. This convergence may not be coincidental. It may represent the fulfillment of a plan that was set in motion thousands of years ago by individuals who understood that advanced technology would eventually be rediscovered and that preserved knowledge would become crucial for guiding that rediscovery process. The responsibility that comes with such revelation is enormous. If the ancient developers went to such extraordinary lengths to preserve this information, they must have believed it was essential for humanity's future development. The knowledge they protected through millennia of concealment may be intended to help modern civilization navigate challenges that they foresaw, but which we are only beginning to understand. The testing of these theories requires approaches that go far beyond conventional archaeology or biblical scholarship. The technological principles embedded in ancient texts can only be validated through practical engineering applications that attempt to recreate the systems described in the preserved specifications. Such testing would require resources, expertise, and security measures that exceed what most academic institutions or private organizations could provide. The verification process would need to address not just the technical feasibility of the described systems, but their safety implications and potential applications. Testing electrical systems capable of generating the power levels described in ancient accounts would require specialized facilities, extensive safety protocols, and personnel with expertise in multiple advanced engineering disciplines. The legal and ethical implications of such testing are complex. Attempts to recreate ancient electrical weapons systems would likely violate numerous laws regarding weapons development, electromagnetic emissions, and public safety. The research would need to be conducted under conditions that could prevent misuse while allowing legitimate scientific investigation. The security implications are equally challenging. Knowledge of how to construct advanced electrical weapons systems based on ancient principles would be extremely valuable to military organizations, terrorist groups, and hostile nations. The research process would need to incorporate security measures that could prevent unauthorized access to critical information while allowing necessary collaboration between qualified researchers. The international implications could be destabilizing. If one nation or organization successfully reconstructed the ark's technology while others remained dependent on conventional systems, the resulting power imbalance could trigger conflicts that make current international tensions seem trivial. The development process would need to consider not just technical feasibility, but global strategic stability. The economic implications are equally significant. Technology capable of providing unlimited clean energy, instantaneous global communication, and advanced medical capabilities would disrupt entire industries while creating new forms of economic organization. The transition to such advanced capabilities would need to be managed carefully to prevent economic collapse or social chaos. The social implications may be the most challenging of all. Technology that can monitor human thoughts and emotions, provide unlimited individual capabilities, and enable new forms of social organization would fundamentally alter the relationship between individuals and institutions. Current concepts of privacy, autonomy, and governance would need to be completely reconsidered in light of such capabilities. The philosophical implications force us to reconsider basic assumptions about human nature, technological progress, and our place in the universe. If advanced technology has been preserved from ancient times, waiting for rediscovery by civilizations mature enough to handle its implications, then our understanding of human development and cosmic relationships needs fundamental revision. The religious implications are equally profound. If the Ark was indeed a technological device, rather than a purely spiritual artifact, then the relationship between science and religion, the nature of divine interaction with human affairs, and the interpretation of sacred texts all require re-examination. The boundaries between natural and supernatural phenomena become blurred when advanced technology produces effects that seem miraculous to observers who don't understand the underlying principles. But perhaps the most important implication is what this revelation suggests about the nature of knowledge itself. If crucial information can be preserved across millennia through encoding systems that protect it from casual discovery while ensuring its availability to qualified investigators, then our assumptions about what can be known and how knowledge is transmitted need fundamental revision. The Ark of the Covenant may represent more than just ancient technology. It may represent a model for how advanced civilizations preserve and transmit crucial knowledge across the gaps and disruptions that characterize human historical development. The techniques used to encode its specifications within religious texts may be examples of information preservation methods that could be applied to protecting other forms of crucial knowledge against loss or misuse. The investigation into the Ark's true nature has revealed not just the possibility of ancient advanced technology, but a sophisticated system for preserving and transmitting knowledge that operates on timescales far beyond conventional human planning horizons. The individuals who created this system understood something fundamental about the nature of civilization, knowledge, and time that we are only beginning to appreciate. As we stand at the threshold of capabilities that could transform human civilization as dramatically as the Ark once transformed ancient Israel, the lessons embedded in its story become increasingly relevant. The technology that could solve our greatest challenges could also create our greatest dangers. The knowledge that could elevate humanity could also destroy it if mishandled or misapplied. The ancient developers of the Ark's preservation system understood these dual possibilities. They created mechanisms that could protect advanced knowledge from misuse while ensuring its availability for beneficial applications. Their encoding systems serve as both warning and guide, demonstrating that the power to transform civilization comes with the responsibility to use that power wisely. The question that haunts this entire investigation is whether we have learned enough from their example to handle the knowledge they preserved. The technology that once required elaborate safety protocols and restricted access may soon be within reach of anyone with sufficient technical knowledge and resources. The systems that ancient priests operated under strict controls may become available to individuals or organizations with no understanding of their proper use or potential consequences. The Ark's story serves as both promise and warning. The promise is that human civilization has access to technological capabilities that could solve our greatest challenges and elevate our species to unprecedented heights. The warning is that such capabilities require wisdom, restraint, and institutional structures capable of managing power that exceeds anything in human experience. The choice we face is the same one that confronted the ancient guardians of the Ark's secrets. We can use advanced knowledge to benefit all humanity, or we can allow it to become a source of division, conflict, and potential destruction. The technology itself is neutral. Its impact depends entirely on the wisdom and character of those who control it. The investigation continues, but its focus has shifted from simply understanding what the Ark was to understanding what its rediscovery means for human civilization. The golden box that disappeared from Solomon's temple may have been waiting all these centuries for a time when humanity would be ready to understand not just its technological capabilities, but the responsibilities that come with possessing them. The age of miracles may indeed be returning, but whether those miracles elevate humanity or destroy it depends on choices that we are only beginning to understand we need to make. The Ark of the Covenant stands as both a technological achievement and a moral challenge, demanding that we prove ourselves worthy of the knowledge that has been preserved for us across the vast span of human history. The preservation systems that protected the Ark's technological secrets reveal a level of institutional planning that spans millennia. These weren't simple hiding places or temporary concealment measures. They were sophisticated knowledge management systems designed to operate across civilizational collapse, religious transformation, and technological revolution. The complexity of these preservation mechanisms suggests that their creators understood something profound about the cyclical nature of human development and the recurring patterns of knowledge loss and rediscovery. Archaeological evidence from sites connected to ancient temple complexes reveals construction techniques that serve no apparent religious purpose, but which make perfect sense as components of long-term technological preservation systems. Hidden chambers with precise environmental controls, ventilation systems that maintain stable atmospheric conditions, and structural designs that could protect sensitive equipment from seismic activity or military assault. These features weren't added randomly. They represent systematic implementation of preservation technologies that demonstrate understanding of material science, environmental engineering, and security principles that supposedly didn't exist in the ancient world. The redundancy built into these preservation systems is staggering in its scope and sophistication. Multiple independent storage locations, cross-reference documentation systems, and backup preservation methods that could maintain critical information even if primary systems were compromised. The geographical distribution of these sites spans continents, suggesting a coordination network that operated on a global scale long before conventional history acknowledges the existence of such international organization. The personnel systems required to maintain these preservation networks would have demanded institutional structures capable of recruiting, training, and managing individuals across multiple generations, while maintaining absolute secrecy about their true purpose. The psychological profiles of individuals willing to dedicate their lives to protecting knowledge they might never fully understand, the selection criteria for identifying suitable candidates, and the training programs necessary to prepare them for responsibilities that could span entire lifetimes. Modern analysis of historical recruitment patterns reveals consistent characteristics among individuals who gained access to advanced knowledge throughout different historical periods. These weren't random selections based on social status or religious devotion. They were systematic identification of individuals with specific psychological traits, intellectual capabilities, and moral characteristics that made them suitable for roles that required extraordinary discretion and long-term commitment to objectives that might not be fulfilled within their lifetimes. The training methodologies preserved within certain esoteric traditions demonstrate pedagogical techniques that seem designed to gradually introduce complex technical concepts through symbolic and metaphorical frameworks that could survive cultural translation while preserving essential information. The progression from basic symbolic understanding through intermediate practical applications to advanced theoretical comprehension represents a systematic curriculum for transmitting sophisticated knowledge across educational barriers that would otherwise make such transmission impossible. The verification systems built into these knowledge transmission methods include internal consistency checks, cross-references between different preservation channels, and validation mechanisms that could detect corruption or unauthorized modification of critical information. These weren't simple error-checking procedures. They were comprehensive quality control systems that could maintain information integrity across centuries of copying, translation, and cultural adaptation. The activation protocols embedded within these preservation systems suggest that the knowledge was never intended to remain hidden permanently. Instead, it was designed to become accessible when specific conditions were met, when human civilization reached developmental thresholds that would enable safe and beneficial application of the preserved information. The criteria for these activation conditions appear to include not just technological capability, but social, ethical, and institutional maturity that would prevent misuse of advanced knowledge. The timing mechanisms built into these activation systems demonstrate understanding of historical cycles and civilizational development patterns that required extraordinary analytical capabilities and long-term perspective. The correlation between knowledge revelation events and periods of technological acceleration throughout history suggests that these activation systems have been functioning as designed, gradually releasing preserved information as human civilization develops the capacity to understand and apply it responsibly. The modern implications of these revelation patterns are profound. If the preservation systems were designed to respond to specific technological and social development markers, then the current era may represent a major activation period when multiple preserved knowledge systems are simultaneously reaching their revelation thresholds. The convergence of advanced computing, materials science, energy technologies, and global communication networks may have triggered release mechanisms that were set in motion thousands of years ago. The evidence for such systematic knowledge release appears in the acceleration of technological development that has characterized the past several centuries. Breakthrough discoveries that seem to exceed what gradual scientific progress should achieve, the simultaneous development of similar technologies by independent researchers, and the appearance of theoretical frameworks that provide comprehensive explanations for phenomena that were previously understood only in fragments. These patterns are consistent with systematic release of preserved knowledge rather than purely organic scientific development. The institutional structures required to manage such knowledge release systems would need capabilities that extend far beyond what any publicly acknowledged organization possesses. They would require global surveillance networks to monitor civilizational development, analytical systems capable of predicting optimal timing for knowledge release, and intervention capabilities that could guide the development and application of revealed knowledge without revealing the source of their guidance. The personnel requirements for such organizations would include individuals with expertise spanning multiple advanced scientific disciplines, historical analysis capabilities that could track civilizational development patterns across millennia, and psychological assessment skills that could evaluate the readiness of specific individuals or groups to receive and responsibly apply advanced knowledge. The recruitment, training, and management of such personnel would require institutional structures that have no equivalent in publicly acknowledged organizational frameworks. The financial resources necessary to maintain such organizations across centuries would require economic systems that operate independently of conventional financial networks, while generating sufficient revenue to support extensive research, development, and operational activities. The investment strategies, resource management techniques, and economic planning capabilities required for such long-term financial sustainability represent institutional achievements that exceed what most governments or corporations have accomplished over much shorter timeframes. The security requirements for protecting such organizations and their activities would necessitate operational security measures that surpass what intelligence agencies use for their most classified programs. The compartmentalization of information, the protection of personnel identities, and the concealment of organizational activities would require security technologies and methodologies that represent significant advances over publicly acknowledged capabilities in these areas. The technological infrastructure required to support such organizational activities would include communication systems that couldn't be monitored through conventional surveillance methods, data storage, and processing capabilities that could maintain vast amounts of information across extended time periods, and transportation systems that could move personnel and materials without detection by government or commercial monitoring networks. The research and development capabilities necessary to understand and apply preserved ancient knowledge would require laboratory facilities, testing equipment, and analytical tools that represent significant advances over what mainstream scientific institutions possess. The development of such capabilities would require not just enormous financial resources, but access to manufacturing technologies, materials, science knowledge, and engineering expertise that might itself be derived from preserved ancient sources. The integration of ancient technological principles with modern scientific understanding would present unprecedented engineering challenges that would require interdisciplinary expertise, spanning archaeology, materials science, electrical engineering, and theoretical physics, the translation of ancient specifications into modern manufacturing processes, the adaptation of ancient operational procedures to contemporary safety standards, and the scaling of ancient technologies to modern applications would require research and development programs that exceed the scope of most government or commercial technology development efforts. The testing and validation of technologies derived from ancient sources would require specialized facilities capable of safely containing and evaluating systems that might generate effects beyond current scientific understanding. The safety protocols for working with electrical systems that operate at power levels described in ancient accounts, the containment systems for acoustic technologies that could produce structural damage, and the monitoring equipment for bioelectrical applications that could affect human physiology would require facility designs and safety procedures that have no equivalent in current practice. The regulatory and legal frameworks for developing and deploying such technologies would need to address applications that don't fit within existing categories of technological regulation. Electrical weapons systems that don't use conventional ammunition, communication technologies that operate on principles not covered by current electromagnetic spectrum management, and energy generation systems that don't fit within existing power industry regulations would require new legal and regulatory approaches that could accommodate technologies that were never anticipated by current legal frameworks. The international implications of deploying technologies derived from ancient sources would require diplomatic strategies that could manage the global impact of capabilities that could fundamentally alter economic, military, and social power structures. The negotiation of technology sharing agreements, the establishment of international oversight mechanisms, and the prevention of technological arms races would require diplomatic initiatives that exceed the complexity of current international technology management efforts. The ethical frameworks for making decisions about ancient technology deployment would require moral and philosophical analysis that goes beyond current ethical guidelines for technological development. The questions of who should have access to technologies that could provide unlimited energy or advanced medical capabilities, how to prevent the use of ancient weapon systems for aggressive purposes, and whether humanity is prepared for the social transformations that such technologies would inevitably produce, represent ethical challenges that have no precedent in human experience. The educational implications of revealing ancient technological knowledge would require fundamental changes to scientific, historical, and religious education that could accommodate the recognition that advanced knowledge has been preserved from ancient times. The revision of textbooks, the retraining of educators, and the development of new curricula that could integrate ancient technological principles with modern scientific understanding would require educational reforms that exceed the scope of any previous educational transformation. The psychological preparation required for societies to accept and adapt to technologies derived from ancient sources would require cultural and social adjustment processes that could help populations understand and cope with the revelation that their assumptions about human technological development have been fundamentally incorrect. The counseling systems, communication strategies, and social support mechanisms necessary to manage such cultural transformation would require psychological and sociological expertise that addresses challenges that have never before been encountered. The economic transitions required to integrate ancient technologies into modern economic systems would require financial planning and economic management capabilities that could handle the disruption of entire industries while facilitating the development of new economic sectors based on technological capabilities that have no current economic precedent. The management of unemployment in obsolete industries, the financing of new technology deployment, and the establishment of economic frameworks for technologies that might eliminate scarcity of basic resources would require economic planning that exceeds the complexity of any previous economic transformation. The infrastructure modifications necessary to support ancient technologies in modern societies would require engineering projects that could integrate systems designed according to ancient principles with contemporary infrastructure networks. The electrical grid modifications necessary to accommodate energy generation systems that operate on different principles, the communication network adaptations required for technologies that use different transmission methods, and the transportation infrastructure changes needed for technologies that might eliminate current mobility limitations would require infrastructure planning and implementation that exceeds the scope of any previous infrastructure development project. The social reorganization that would inevitably result from the deployment of ancient technologies would require political and social planning capabilities that could manage transitions to new forms of social organization while maintaining stability and preventing conflicts that could result from dramatic changes in individual and group capabilities. The governance systems, legal frameworks, and social institutions necessary to manage societies where individuals might have access to unlimited energy, advanced communication capabilities, and enhanced physical or mental abilities would require political innovation that has no precedent in human governmental experience. The cultural preservation requirements for maintaining human identity and values during such technological transformation would require anthropological and sociological expertise that could help societies maintain their essential cultural characteristics while adapting to capabilities that could fundamentally alter human experience. The protection of cultural diversity, the preservation of traditional knowledge systems, and the maintenance of human relationships and communities in environments where technology might eliminate many current social necessities would require cultural planning that addresses challenges that have never before been encountered. The long-term planning required to manage the consequences of ancient technology deployment would require strategic thinking capabilities that could anticipate and prepare for developments that might unfold over centuries or millennia. The consideration of how such technologies might affect human evolution, the preparation for potential contact with other civilizations that might possess similar technologies, and the development of safeguards against technological dependencies that could make human civilization vulnerable to catastrophic failure would require planning horizons and analytical capabilities that exceed current institutional planning capacities. The monitoring and control systems necessary to ensure that ancient technologies are used responsibly would require surveillance and intervention capabilities that could detect and prevent misuse while respecting individual privacy and autonomy. The balance between ensuring safety and maintaining freedom, the protection of technology from hostile acquisition while allowing beneficial applications, and the maintenance of oversight without creating oppressive control systems would require governance innovations that address regulatory challenges that have no current equivalent. The backup and redundancy systems necessary to protect against the loss of ancient technological knowledge would require preservation methodologies that could ensure the survival of critical information across potential future catastrophes while maintaining accessibility for legitimate applications. The creation of multiple independent preservation systems, the establishment of protocols for knowledge transfer across generational changes, and the development of activation mechanisms that could restore lost capabilities would require institutional planning that addresses preservation challenges that exceed current knowledge management capabilities. The integration of ancient technological principles with future scientific development would require research planning capabilities that could guide scientific advancement along pathways that could eventually achieve the full potential of preserved ancient knowledge while avoiding developmental directions that might prove dangerous or counterproductive. The coordination of research priorities, the allocation of resources across multiple scientific disciplines, and the management of research timelines that might extend across centuries would require scientific planning that exceeds the scope of current research management capabilities. The question that haunts every aspect of this investigation is whether human civilization possesses the wisdom, institutional capabilities, and moral development necessary to handle knowledge that was preserved by civilizations that may have been far more advanced than our own. The technologies embedded in ancient preservation systems represent not just engineering achievements, but tests of human character and social development that will determine whether such knowledge becomes a blessing or a catastrophe for our species. The ancient guardians who created these preservation systems understood that advanced technology without corresponding wisdom and institutional maturity could destroy the very civilizations it was meant to help. Their encoding of technological knowledge within moral and philosophical frameworks wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate attempt to ensure that the revelation of advanced capabilities would be accompanied by the ethical development necessary to use those capabilities responsibly. The activation of these ancient preservation systems may represent humanity's final examination, a test that will determine whether our species is ready to join whatever community of advanced civilizations may exist beyond our current understanding. The knowledge that has been preserved for us across millennia of human development may be our inheritance, but only if we prove ourselves worthy of receiving it. The Ark of the Covenant stands as both symbol and reality of this ultimate test. Its technological capabilities represent the potential for human advancement beyond our current imagination. Its preservation across thousands of years of human history represents the faith that ancient guardians placed in our eventual development. Whether we fulfill their expectations or prove unworthy of their trust may determine the future trajectory of human civilization for millennia to come. The investigation into the Ark's true nature has revealed that we are not alone in the universe, not because we have discovered other civilizations, but because we have discovered that our own civilization is part of a continuity that extends far back into the mists of human history and possibly far forward into our future development. The golden box that disappeared from Solomon's temple may have been the key to understanding our place in that continuity and our responsibilities to those who preserved its secrets for us across the vast expanse of human time. The threads of evidence we've woven together throughout this investigation converge on a single, inescapable conclusion that should shake you to your very core. The Ark of the Covenant was never a simple religious artifact. It was a machine, a technological marvel so advanced that it made Bronze Age civilizations appear to wield the power of gods themselves. Every specification, every safety protocol, every operational procedure described in ancient texts points toward electrical engineering principles that humanity supposedly wouldn't discover for another 3,000 years, but the implications stretch far beyond ancient history. If such technology existed then, if it was deliberately hidden and its knowledge preserved through secret channels across millennia, then we must confront a terrifying possibility. We may not be witnessing the dawn of human technological achievement. We may be witnessing its resurrection. The electromagnetic pulse weapons being developed in classified military programs today, the atmospheric energy harvesting systems being researched by government laboratories, the bioelectrical monitoring technologies being deployed by intelligence agencies. Could these represent the gradual reintroduction of principles that were first implemented in a golden box that vanished from Solomon's temple over 2,000 years ago? The silence from archaeological institutions becomes more sinister when viewed through this lens. The untranslated tablets gathering dust in museum vaults, the restricted access to excavation sites beneath ancient temple complexes, the classification of documents that might contain references to advanced ancient technologies. This isn't scholarly caution. This is systematic suppression of information that could rewrite human history and reveal that our greatest technological achievements may actually be our oldest. The organizations that have spent centuries guarding these secrets possess capabilities that extend far beyond what any government or corporation officially acknowledges. They operate with resources that seem unlimited, influence that reaches into the highest levels of power, and knowledge that spans disciplines our universities don't even teach. They've waited patiently for humanity to develop the scientific foundation necessary to understand what they've been protecting, and that moment may have finally arrived. The choice before us is stark and urgent. We can continue accepting the sanitized version of history we've been fed, believing that human civilization is a steady march of progress from primitive beginnings to modern sophistication. Or we can recognize that we're part of a cycle, inheritors of knowledge that was preserved for us by guardians who understood that civilization's greatest achievements often become its most dangerous secrets. The Ark of the Covenant wasn't lost. It was hidden, waiting for a generation wise enough to handle its power responsibly. The question that will define our future is whether we are that generation, or whether we'll prove unworthy of the trust placed in us across millennia of patient preservation. The golden box may be waiting in some hidden chamber, its circuits still humming with the same electrical potential that once struck down those who approached it without proper preparation. Its guardians may be watching us even now, evaluating whether humanity has finally developed the wisdom to inherit the technological legacy that could transform our species or destroy it. The age of revelation is upon us. The only question is whether we're ready for what we're about to discover about ourselves, our past, and the incredible responsibility that comes with understanding that the Ark of the Covenant was never just a religious symbol. It was always a machine, and that machine may be about to change everything we thought we knew about human civilization and our place in the cosmos. The investigation ends here, but the real story is just beginning. The truth has been preserved, protected, and prepared for this moment. What happens next depends entirely on what we choose to do with the knowledge that has been waiting for us across the vast span of human history.